rabbit hole. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do.
Marjory Stephenson is not a household name and probably one that few of you will recognize.
This portrait was commissioned by Newnham College, Cambridge, when Marjory, an associate fellow of the college, together with Kathleen Lonsdale, a physicist, became the first women elected Fellows of the Royal Society in 1945. For 285 years since its foundation, the Royal Society had been an all-male bastion. So who was Marjory Stephenson, and what was her science? Marjory, or MS as she called herself, was the leader in the field of microbial biochemistry, one of the few at the time to realize the usefulness of studying the gut bacterium E. coli, not as a pathogen, but as a model organism that could provide insights into basic biochemistry. She jokingly likened herself to Alice in Wonderland, shaking hands with the microbes she studied down her microscope. And in her adventures, she ends up being put on trial for treason to the bacterial state. Marjory effectively headed an MRC unit that she set up herself at the biochemistry department in Cambridge. She was one of the first scientists to isolate an enzyme, lactic dehydrogenase, in 1928.
Her book, Bacterial Metabolism, was the reference textbook for biochemists and microbiologists worldwide for more than 3 decades.
Jokingly, she wrote her own book review.
This racy and intimate account of the greatest bacterial metabolists of the last 50 years will appeal to all animal lovers. This is a book that every biochemist should borrow, or even buy.
Where did this all begin? To find out, we will leave Newnham College and head off to Burwell, a village northeast of Cambridge where Marjory grew up.
Marjory was the youngest of 4 children. Her parents, particularly her father, who ran a large farm, and a governess, stimulated her scientific interest at an early age. Her mother insisted she should get a university degree, and in 1903 she came to Newnham College, Cambridge, which will be our next stop. At Newnham, she studied chemistry, zoology, and physiology. University life as a female student in the early 20th century was far different from today. Not only were the girls, in their long skirts, chaperoned to their lectures outside of college, but after sitting their exams, they were not allowed a degree. I will now meet the historian Dr. Jill Sutherland at the old labs in Newnham College, where the physics and chemistry labs took place.
By the time Marjory Stephenson came up to Newnham in 1903, there was a settled pattern. Experimental work was done by the women separately, physics and chemistry in the laboratory behind me, biological work in the laboratory that Newnham bought on the Downing site, which was named the Balfour Laboratory. And this was very early provision. This is one of the second buildings built by the college on this site when they were strapped for cash. And it's a measure that it was built 1879 to 80, and it's a measure of how seriously they took scientific work for the women. The biggest challenge for the women, possibly in their student days, was some isolation from the life of the university. On the other hand, you have to remember the isolation that many of them experienced at home, where they were expected to be the daughters at home, to be at everybody's beck and call, and that is the whole argument of a room of one's own. Here they had rooms of their own. Then a separate problem arose if they wanted, after completing their examinations and having degree-level qualifications, but not a degree, if they wanted to become financially independent, if they wanted to earn their own living. And there were very few occupations open to women, particularly women scientists in that period.
My next stop is the Biochemistry department. Marjory came back to Cambridge in 1919. She had spent the intervening years teaching and doing experimental science at University College London. Her career was interrupted by the First World War, during which, incidentally, she worked for the Red Cross and was awarded an MBE. During her time in Cambridge, she taught extensively, but she was not appointed university reader until many years later, in 1947. Biochemistry was a young subject, and bacterial biochemistry in its infancy. She didn't like lecturing herself, but was not shy to criticize a fellow colleague.
Meanwhile, I propose to explode a rocket under your chair, because I realise that if I don't, no one will. It's this, dear Sydney. Your lecturing habit has become really bad, plus must be remedied because we cannot afford to let it go on. I do beg you to take this seriously. Could you not, for a bit, write out your lectures, plus addresses, plus then prune out the undergrowth? It's far better to read a lecture than to go on like this.
Marjory remained unmarried throughout her life, which at this time was an advantage in terms of higher salary and independence. She built a house on Latham Road, where she enjoyed her garden, particularly her fruit trees, and entertained friends. She had a lively, buoyant, and enthusiastic personality with a good deal of humour. She was never recognized as the de facto director of the MRC unit she headed. Instead, after her tragic death from cancer in 1948, her former male PhD student was appointed director of the unit. She was instrumental in founding the Society for General Microbiology, now known as Microbiology Society, and was its second president after Alexander Fleming, discoverer of penicillin. In 1949, 1 year after her death, the Society established an award in her name, the Marjory Stephenson Lecture.
So Marjory Stephenson is memorable because she was an inspirational scientist, hugely successful in the first half of the 20th century, at a time when science was dominated completely by males. So to be successful in that environment, that took some real extra qualities, determination, and ability.
One of her major scientific discoveries was adaptive enzymes, which were later called by Jacques Monod inductive enzymes. There are enzymes induced only in the presence of their substrates.
I have got on to the most interesting piece of research I've ever done. Where it's going to turn next, I just don't know. Yours, M.S.